So today I want to talk about getting started in World of Warcraft. Now, if you've previously considered getting into WoW, but you found it difficult to get started for whatever reason, often because the starting area and the starting experience is really just not that compelling, to be honest, compared to the promise of content at endgame, then if that's the case, I think 2020 might be the perfect time for you to actually take the opportunity to give it another go. Why do I think that? Well, that's because there has been a fundamental redesign of the entire leveling process, and this is happening for the first time since, I guess, Cataclysm, which was the expansion that came out in 2010. With the introduction of the Shadowlands expansion in 2020, there are going to be two massive changes to leveling. Firstly, there's this fresh new player starting experience known as EXILE'S Reach, and secondly, the absolute mess of leveling through 15 years worth of disjointed content has been removed for new players. This is being replaced with a coordinated journey through the most recent expansions. Now that second change is pretty simple. As a new player, you're going to be leveling through the Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands expansions, and for that reason you're going to get the most recent story. And in theory, because it's the latest experience, i.e. the most recently developed, then you should be getting the best questing that the game has to offer. Really quite simple, and I don't need to go into any more detail on that. However, this only happens after you leave the new starting zone, EXILE'S Reach. And that's the new player experience that I want to talk about in this video, as I think it's going to have a huge impact on people playing WoW for the first time, and even for those returning after a long break. So what is EXILE'S Reach exactly? Well, to put it into context, let's talk about the existing leveling experience, the existing starting zones within WoW. As it stands, and as it has been for many years, you create your character and then you're dropped into a starting zone that is essentially a very basic quest hub without any real compelling story that sends you to kill 7 kobolds, kill 5 wolves, bring back some bundles of wood, whatever it might be. It's essentially kill and fetch quests, maybe some exploration quests and a few other things chucked in, but there's no big driving narrative and sort of scenario for you to get into like you're used to in other games, maybe RPGs like Red Dead Redemption or God of War. These games offer you some sort of story that immerses you right off the bat, and WoW really just doesn't do that at present. Now this really turns off a lot of people who might have played some of these other games. Don't get me wrong, an MMORPG can never be an experience like God of War, for example, but I think it can get a lot closer to telling an immersive story early on than World of Warcraft's current state, because not a huge amount has changed since, well, really 2004, let alone 2010. I mean, we redid the questing experience in 2010, but it's still off the same principle, really. It's a bit better, it flows a bit better, but it's still not particularly immersive or compelling. Now, EXILE'S Reach is hopefully going to fix that, and I've played EXILE'S Reach and I've quite enjoyed it, and that's why I'm quite excited about it and have made this video. Basically, this replaces that old leveling experience with a scenario. So it tells a story where you basically take an expedition to an island, and by the way, this is not an island expedition for people who have played BFA, don't worry, that would be tragic, it's not that at all. It's basically an area where you can learn the basics of the game whilst being taken through a story in which some of your crew members are captured and you end up battling this ogre who's trying to resurrect a dragon and sow some kind of chaos. It is pretty good. Like I said, I enjoyed it, and it's a story. Whereas before it was just go and, beat up a few wolves for God knows what reason. I mean, I don't know what these wolves did to deserve this punishment for 15 years, but there you go. The second thing that really drew me in straight away was the fact that the zone itself is absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful island, it's got really immersive areas. You go into this sort of gloomy, misty forest, and I think we were fighting centaurs in there, or you'll see in the video if I'm right about that or not. I think it was centaurs. And then you go delve into this dark spider cave full of cobwebs and spiders hanging from the ceilings. It all just felt much more immersive than that quite boring forest setting that you get, say, in Alban Forest in Northshire Abbey. You also find this bear cave with a particularly angry bear there that we'll get into in a bit. And then there's this big ogre fortress that's really nicely done and actually features a mini dungeon, and again we'll get into that later in the video. But overall, as you can see, it's a really nice looking area. Obviously it takes advantage of the latest of what WoW has to offer in terms of graphics. Now obviously the latest that WoW has to offer in terms of graphics isn't world beating, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking about an engine that was built back in the early 2000s, and I think they've done a good job to bring it up to speed to make things look better, but they're never going to be competing with, I don't know, say Amazon's New World MMO Amazon's New World MMO that's coming out early this year, no, early next year, I think. But, you know, it's nice looking for WoW. So aside from storytelling and feel, the core ideas of this starting experience is to really teach you the basics, and I think it does a good job of that. And this is something that's just been missing for years in WoW. You used to get these little boxes pop up and tell you how to do basic things, but it never felt particularly like a good fluid starting experience. You'd often get like 10 of them pop up at a time almost, and you're reading through each one, and it's not really experiential. It's just, this is how you do something, rather than let's go and do this thing a few times and get used to it, you know, learn by experience. Now, Exile's Reach does that. It teaches the absolute basics: how to move, how to attack, how to face the right way when you're attacking, how to use an ability. And then it goes on to teach you some other things, like how to interact with NPCs, non-player characters that means, and buy and sell items. It also shows you more of the advanced concepts, I suppose. Not particularly advanced if you played WoW before, but if you haven't, then I guess this could be considered advanced, such as not standing in bad stuff, abilities that are going to be damaging, and interrupting casts of some of the ogre mages you fight on the island, for example. It's not perfect, it doesn't tell you absolutely everything, and we'll get onto that a bit later, but it's a marked improvement. It's a massive improvement, actually. And in my opinion, it's exactly what WoW has needed for years and years, so I think they've done a great job here, I'll be honest. It also introduced you to different types of quests, so you have your standard kill and fetch quests, of course, as I mentioned. I don't think they're ever going from MMOs, to be honest. They're core to what you do. You defeat enemies and you gather different materials to make different things or make money or whatever it might be. I don't see how you can ever lose those from MMOs, to be honest. But it does also offer some variety, so you have a mission where you fly around on this weird little gnomish contraption and scout an area. You take a ride on a chunky pig boy that you've managed to use another gnomish invention to turn into some sort of turbo pig, you'll see in the video. And you even have an elite quest to kill a bear, which is actually a group quest, which is pretty cool. I actually managed to solo it as a warrior, and yes, I suppose I'm more of an experienced WoW player. I'm not a particularly good WoW player, I'm quite upfront about that, but obviously I have some experience from playing it since 2005. But remember, this is on the PTR, it's not fully tuned yet. I would like to see them make that a little bit more difficult, especially considering I soloed it for Warrior, which isn't exactly a famous class for being able to solo content like that. But nonetheless, it's introducing the concept of a group quest, which again is something that feels like it's really fallen out of favour in WoW Levelling. There used to be a lot of that in Classic, and I used to quite enjoy that. So maybe that's an indication that we'll be seeing more of that kind of group leveling content in the future. I don't know. But anyway, it's cool. So essentially what they've managed to do here is get these basic things that you need to learn about the game, introduce different concepts, and all the while keeping you within this nice sort of storytelling flow, within this narrative. This narrative ends with a sort of grand finale that takes you to a dungeon, actually, which I think is brilliant because that was never part of the starting experience before for new players, and it's such a core part of World of Warcraft as a game. This dungeon introduces you to the concept of the Trinity, as we called it, which is the tank, the healer, and the damage dealer, or the DPS, as you'll see them called. So you get that basic MMO concept of there's this tank who stands there and draws the attention of the enemy and has damage reducing abilities so they can take the damage away from the rest of the party. Then you have the healer who's trying to keep everyone alive with holy magic or nature magic, or it depends on your class really. And then there's the damage dealer, who pretty much is responsible for doing what it says on the tin, damaging things. There's a lot more to it than that, and there's different mechanics and there's different utility they have, but it just introduces that very basic trinity that is so vital in the game. This is done around what you'd call trash packs, so just sort of packs of enemies within the dungeon who aren't anything particularly special. And it also includes a couple of boss fights that are a bit more challenging. Don't get me wrong, they're not challenging compared to the dungeons later on in WoW, but you know, they give you an idea that when you get into a boss fight, it's this significant event where the difficulty is going to be upped and you're going to have to do more to be able to defeat this encounter. The whole idea is introducing the concept rather than it being ridiculously hard and putting players off early on. Once you've done that, it's time to leave Exile's Reach, and again, this is where I think they've done quite a good job of just allowing the story then to flow smoothly into the Battle for Azeroth expansion. So it takes you to Stormwind City, which is the sort of human capital city of the Alliance, or if you're a Horde player, I assume it probably takes you to Orgrimmar. I don't know, I haven't played the Horde side. From here, the story progresses naturally into BFA. It's that same sort of island-based nautical theme, so it doesn't feel like a massive departure from what you were doing in Exile's Reach. I think thematically that works quite well. And then you just play through BFA, the expansion that we've been playing for the last 2 years. The quests are relatively good in it. There's some things I didn't like about BFA, but I actually think it will be quite a nice leveling experience. It tells a story. No issue there. So that'll be level 10 to level 50 essentially. And then at level 50, you'll flow into the Shadowlands. So you get the most recent story of WoW right up to the present moment, which will be, but by the time you're watching this video, probably the Shadowlands expansion. This is opposed to going through Classic WoW, the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria. What came after that? Warlords of Draenor. Jesus Christ, I tried to forget that one clearly. Legion, and then BFA, Battle for Azeroth, and then the Shadowlands. So doing that, all of those expansions within a really small amount of time, because leveling really just doesn't take that long anymore, has been the absolute killer of enjoyment for WoW leveling for a very, very long time, and we are getting rid of that. Now, side note, for returning players, you can choose to level in any one of those expansions if you want to, but for new players, you will not even have that option at first, not until you've got your first character to level 60, which is going to be the new level cap. So overall, I think this is a huge development for new players, and maybe those of us who have been trying to persuade friends to play for years will have a better shot of doing so with Exile's Reach. It might not be the high-octane action of some RPG or FPS games, but it's a huge improvement, and alongside the endgame that WoW has to offer, it might just be enough to finally get some of those people interested who maybe just couldn't quite get into it before. It really is far superior when it comes to storytelling, teaching the basics of questing and dungeons, and introducing various mechanics that otherwise you had to really just work out for yourself. Of course, I am playing on the PTR, which is a test realm, so things are subject to change, but hopefully only for the better. Anyway, that's it for today. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and yeah, see you next time.